Thank you all for tuning in for today's session, Remote Access using Aruba Virtual Intranet Agent, also known as VIA. I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today, our SVP of Engineering Services, Charlie Kohler.
Hi all, welcome again to this week's session. I want to remind everyone that this first section of the presentation will be recorded. We will be posting these onto our website in the blog section here in the coming weeks. So we'll be showing the full series on there. To that same effect, you will see one or two slides that you've seen in the previous weeks. Just since we're talking about remote access, it's very similar in the way it's configured. So we want to kind of show how the different pieces tie in together. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So today we're gonna look at remote access using VIA, like Jess introduced us for the topic today. We'll go through the architecture very quickly, look at the controllers that are able to support it and what their limits are, the clients that are supported for this, features, and then we'll go through quickly a basic configuration overview. And then as always, at the end of the time, we'll sit there and open up the lines for conversation, talk about any current hurdles you guys are going through, or just any topics that you want to talk about in a technology base with peers that are on the call today. So again, this is one of the first slides that we presented on our first one when we were talking about remote access points. I want to show this slide again because we've talked about the wraps 2 weeks ago. Today we are talking about VIA down here in the bottom left. Next week, we will be talking about the branch office controller. So I want to show this slide because this gives you a great representation of all the different options that Aruba offers for remote access back into your corporate environment. Not only for personal devices or when you're at home or a remote worker, but also for branch offices. So I want to show this slide is very similar to the last one, but what I want to show here is we're going to be able to talk about VIA agent and how it's actually able to make a determination of if you're inside the network or outside the network. So we'll get into a little bit more detail as we go further into it, but very briefly, the VIA agent's going to look to its connection profile and determine if you're communicating with the outside interface of the controller or the inside interface of the controller. With that, it'll then determine if it's going to start up automatically or not start up. Obviously, you can set it so that you have to manually start it as well. But the great thing about this tool, and one of the reasons I love it as much as I do, is that functionality of where it can auto start VPN as soon as you're off network. So we're going to talk about the controllers. These are the next gen controllers, but there's actually a new set of controllers that are even beyond this. So we want to talk about these guys and the fact that these are very cost-effective boxes. For example, a 7005 around $1,500 list price can support 1,000 users for this VIA agent. So it can get a very large number of clients connected at a very small device. So you can see it's basically the size of an AP and basically can be mounted and powered up with PoE just like an access point. So one thing that you have to take into consideration when looking at these numbers for number of clients, that is the number of concurrent IPsec sessions. So if you add remote access points to this controller, that takes part of those IPsec tunnels. So if you have 150 remote access points, that's going to remove the numbers from the clients that can be connected. So just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that when you guys are looking to size out your project. So the reason I want to bring up, there's a new set of series. There's a new set called the 9000 series controllers, which are the 9004s and the 9008s, I believe, are the two models that are ready to ship. Those allow for branch, those are mainly meant in the branch string, but when you use the Aruba branch or SD branch model, you actually get the VIA licenses for free. If you're doing a normal controller, you could do licensing based on the number of users or the full platform, so the controller limits. So to talk about the number of the clients that are able to be supported with VIA, you can actually use any Windows system Vista and newer, so Windows Vista 7 and 10, Mac OS 10.6 or newer. We're all the way up into 10.14 and 10.15 now. So we're able to support all the way up into those. iOS devices from 4.2 and newer, Android 4.0.2 and newer, and Linux. Most people are using Ubuntu when they're looking at the laptops and the connections, and that's 12.04 and newer. So I want to talk very briefly around some of the features that are out there for VIA. The great thing about it is it's able to do IPsec or NAT-T transport, which is great because it can get through most of the firewalls that are out there. But if port 4500 is not open at a hotel or a corporate office that you're visiting, you can set it up to do SSL fallback. So it'll do IPsec over SSL, which is great. The other good thing about it is we can actually do split tunnel or full tunnel mode, like we talked about with the remote access points. So we can determine what traffic we want to bring back to the corporate office, or if we want to bring all traffic back to the office. Very nice functionality and great functions to be able to allow for better support for your users and better user experiences. Because you don't want to have to take everyone's YouTube traffic back into your corporate environment when they're off site and use your WAN connectivity. So being able to do a split tunnel there is very nice. So that kind of goes over into the seamless user experience. So we'll kind of jump over that one. Simple administration. Everything is able to be done very easily. If there's issues with the client connectivity, there's a button within the agent that says send logs. They're able to click that button and it packages up all the logs and is able to send that directly to the network team so they can do some troubleshooting. So the automatic trust detection, that's kind of what I mentioned earlier with being able to do the inside or outside network, and it will automatically launch the VPN tunnel. Flexible authentication. This is great here. There's 5 different authentication methods that you're able to go through. Here, there's IKV1 PSK, IKV1 509 cert, IKV2 509 cert, IKV2 MS Chat v2, IK2 TLS, and SweetB crypto for those that are in the DoD. Is usually where we will see that one. So very highly secure and very well encrypted traffic coming across this as well. And the great thing is that, like we were mentioning on the last slide, it supports almost every agent that you would imagine to be out there today. So we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about the security specifications. I'm going to very quickly just kind of show this. This is kind of the very much a nerd slide, talking about the different encryption methods, the hash authentication, and the different groups of encryption that are going to be happening around it. So we don't want to jump too far into this, but just wanted to be able to show this and show you that there are quite a number of different ways for encryption and authentication. So I want to kind of show you what the agent looks like. Normally I've been showing this live, but today I didn't want to show it live just because as I was doing the test run for the presentation, as I did the connection, it was dropping me from the call as it was making the VPN connection. So I didn't want to have that problem showing up during the presentation while we were recording. So you can see it's an agent that pops up and you'll see this nice green circle. When it's connecting, it's an orange circle that's rotating around. And the great thing about it is it does tell you down here at the bottom that you're on an untrusted network. It tells you if you're doing full tunnel or split tunnel, and if you're doing IPsec or SSL fallback. The next page here is it's actually showing us the logs of, you can see it's doing a version check every time it connects. So when you upgrade your gateway or your ClearPass server, it's actually going to be able to tell this device, hey, you need to run an update. We can actually force it to make that update before it's allowed to connect, or allow it to have older versions that still are able to connect. Then you can see it's a user. It's doing the remote server connection, and that's successful, and it's initializing and coming back up. Then you can go about and you'd be able to see what your version is. So this is a slide that's easy for the help desk to be able to look at and kind of be able to tell the basics of the agent of what's going on and be able to help troubleshoot the client. One thing that I really wanted to mention around this is there is a unified client. So this actually helps us take the security to the next level when it looks at the VIA agent for your VPN. So we're actually able to include the VIA piece with the OnGuard agent. So what that is, we haven't talked about OnGuard yet. We're going to do a ClearPass series here in the next couple months. But OnGuard is basically your NAC, your network access control, or your posture checking application, which will set a number of requirements saying it's got to be a certain Windows operating system, it's got to have certain patch dates, it's got to have an antivirus running, all of those kind of things that you would think about when you're looking at network access control or posturing. So we can actually put the OnGuard agent and the VIA agent in on the same one. So you can see here on this first one, we're actually doing the VPN not connected because you're on the trusted network. But you can also then see that we're doing a health check, and we have responded back to the network telling it that this device does meet our policy for compliance today. And you can actually, this is the great thing with those remote devices. If a device is not healthy or not compliant, say they're running a peer-to-peer application, we won't let them on the VPN. So this is that nice next step for security to be able to go through and while they're off-site, be able to fully secure those devices as well. So I'm going to jump over to our next slide. Actually, we can continue here a little bit on the next slide. So again, we mentioned the VIA licensing. So we were talking about how the policy enforcement VPN, so the PEF-V license is a box capacity. So this is the one that I usually end up using just because it's easier to manage the license on it. Where this, like, say you were to buy the 7005 PEF-V license, you would have licensing for 1048 different connections into it. Where if you use the LIC VIA, the LIC-VIA license, this is a per user license. So you would have to say, I know I only have 150 users or 50 users or 10 users. I'm going to pay for those 10. And now from there, only those 10 users or however many licenses you buy are going to be able to authenticate. The great thing about this is they actually allow a 25% overage. So if you had 10, you'd get 13. If you were running through an environment where more people connected than you expected on that one given day. So that's the great thing about that. The ACR, this is where we do the Suite B encryption. So this is an extra license to be able to go in and do that extra Suite B highly classified or highly encrypted data. So one of the great things, some of the competitors that we compete against with this product, the VPN clients are not free, where with this one, the Aruba VIA client is free, which is one thing I want to bring up today. You're only paying for the license on the gateway, not for the clients and the support for the clients. So we're doing good on time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly go through our basic configuration, and I'll kind of describe some of the options that we go through as we go into that. So I'm showing an 8x example here, just because more and more of our clients are moving it over to 8x. So what we're showing here is that you have to go into, you have to change directories into your managed node and where your external VIA facing controller is going to be. So I went into MD-Surevera-VIA. So I have a controller that's sitting out there that's got that name. Then what we do is we create a pool. What this is it's a named pool that says these are the set of IP addresses that I'm going to let into, or I'm going to assign to people or to the tunnels as the tunnels come up. So I'm going and I'm creating 192.168.100 0 through 255. So I've got 254 possible tunnels to bring up with the way I'm set up here today. Then I'm also doing a pre-shared key of Aruba 123 for all devices coming in. That way we know that it's a secured authentication as well. Then what we're doing right below that is we're telling it the client authentic or the client DNS settings. We're telling it that we're going to use the Google DNS servers, and I also put in our internal servers. And if I were to do this again, I'd probably flip that, where I would put my internal DNS servers as my primary and then an external DNS as a secondary. So the next part that we're doing here is we're setting up the type of authentication that we're going to do for our overlay authentication, and I picked MS CHAP. So we can actually go in and do a few different sets of authentication there as well. Here we can do PAP, MSCHAP v2, MSCHAP, EAP, CHAP, and cache secure ID. So we can actually do RSA two-factor authentication with this system as well. So that's a nice functionality in of itself. So our next one we're going to go over and we're going to look at the authentication profile. So what we're looking at here is we're telling it what role we're going to give users. So basically a default role that we're giving to users as they come into the environment. And here what we've done is we just said a user in the role via client is going to get the access list session allow all. Granted, here in many cases, we would look at it and we would actually want to be a little bit more secure around that. And we could actually set a full set of firewall rules there saying that you can only access certain subnets, certain hosts, or you're very specific on what they're allowed to have access to. You could actually have multiple user roles, which is what I'm going to talk about on this next section of the authentication. So what we're doing in this next section is we are looking at the via authentication profile. We're telling it that the default role is via client, but then we're also allowing it to from ClearPass, because I said server role ClearPass, sorry. Server default role via client, but server group ClearPass. So one good thing to note here is this server group has to be configured outside of what I'm showing here. And a server group is just a group of different radius servers that are able to accept authentication and provide access. So what I did here is I did download role. So what I'm able to do with that is ClearPass will have a set of roles and the policies. So your ACLs and your firewall rules will be living in ClearPass. And as a user authenticates, say it's an IT user, they get an allow all. But if they're a HR person, they only get access to the HR servers. That information is going to be downloaded from ClearPass into the VIA controller, and that's the role and the access that the user would be given. So what we're going to talk about next here is the connection profile. This is where a lot of the power and the strength of this is we can actually set multiple different server addresses in here so that they have multiple different ways to connect into it. So this is where we gain our redundancy and we're able to spread this across multiple data centers. So you can see here, like I was talking about, we have to tell it what our external address is and what our internal address is. And then we give it a position of 1 and 2. And then we could have multiple auth profiles as well. You can see here we have the via auth profile, but that's set to position 1. If I want to create via backup auth, that would be set to position 2. So this last command that you're seeing here is a nice one that is unique, where if users are logging in to their Windows machine with AD credentials that are the ones that you're going to have them authenticate to the VIA agent with, we can actually have that pass through. The way I have it set here is we would not do that. But if I took this command out, they would be able to pass the credentials from the Windows logon into the VIA agent, and the VIA agent would take those credentials. Very nice, makes it very easy to go through. So the last set of configuration pieces that we're going to take a look at is the web auth. So this is how we set up the initial authentication, how they download their profiles. So we're going to set it to via auth. So we're going to use that same ClearPass server, and it's going to authenticate against that using their AD credentials. And then from there, the last line of commands that we're looking at here is I enabled SSL fallback.
Thank you for watching our webinar replay. We hope you found the information helpful. The Surevera team is ready to assist you with any follow-up questions or needs you may have. To get more information about our upcoming webinars, join our email list from our website or follow us on social media. You can also access all of our existing webinar content on our website and social media channels.